do. It's simple. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, the mission in Afghanistan is clearly a matter of great concern for most Canadians. Anytime we as a nation send our courageous men and women into harm's way, it is essential that we undertake such mission only after a full and thorough process of review and consideration. All views, all opinions, and all possibilities must be considered. There are many different things to consider when debating the mission in Afghanistan. A measure of the importance of this matter to our constituents across the country is the sheer volume of emails, letters, and telephone calls we have received from those we represent. I have personally met with many constituents who have deep reservations and considerable concerns about the mission in Afghanistan. I share many of these concerns. I am, of course, particularly concerned about the decision to extend the mission in view of the concerns that have been expressed about the success of this undertaking to date. There have been 80 Canadians who have lost their lives in Afghanistan since the beginning of the mission. The financial cost of the mission has also been considerable. In May of 2006, when the issue of extending the mission was put before Parliament, I voted against the extension because I truly believe it was the right thing to do. I did not vote in favor of the latest extension. Regardless of the position that members of Parliament took during the previous debate, a consensus has emerged which maintains that if the mission must continue, it must also change. Canadians have made it clear that if we are to continue in Afghanistan, then our focus must be on reconstruction and humanitarian aid. The debate as to when our troops will return home appear to have been settled, at least for the moment. We know that a date of 2011 has been set through. I must confess to being somewhat concerned by the apparent wavering on the part of the Prime Minister at the Bucharest NATO summit regarding a specific end date. Indeed, this very question was asked by my honourable colleague from Etobicoke Lakeshore of the Prime Minister just yesterday, and his only reply was to our allies, did not need to ask. Canadians have now been told that the end date is 2011, and we hope we are not now hearing the beginning of wavering on the part of the government. Nonetheless, it has been decided that they will come home in 2011. While some members may claim that the troops can be brought home tomorrow, the Government of Canada has made international agreements. They cannot be abandoned lightly. However, that does not mean that we should extend carte blanche to this government. Given the continuing operations of our soldiers in Afghanistan, Parliament has an obligation to ensure that the mission is being conducted in accordance with the will of Canadians, and there simply must be a better framework of accountability. Indeed, the recent Afghanistan motion made reference to the need for more oversight and the transition from a combat mission to one focused on reconstruction. As my colleague, the member from Toronto Centre, and our party's foreign affairs critic has stated, the key thing to recognize is that our outright military victory in traditional terms is hard to achieve. I believe my honourable colleague is absolutely correct, and I further believe that most Canadians and reasonable observers fully agree with his contention. Therefore, it is, I believe, essential that we have enhanced oversight and accountability for the Afghanistan mission that is fair, constructive, and responsive. The government owes it to this Parliament and to Canadians across the country to commit itself to greater accountability and oversight of the mission in Afghanistan. As noted, the motion passed by the House called for the formation of a committee to oversee the mission. The committee also procedures and House Affairs has not yet set up such a committee, and it is essential that the government facilitate the movement forward on this commitment in the committee. Mr. Speaker, today's motion is not about whether or not the mission should or should not have been extended. That issue, rightly or wrongly, has already been decided. Today's motion is about ensuring that this government lives up to its words, that follows through on their commitment to the people of Canada and to this Parliament. It is about showing Canadians that Parliament can work together for the better of our society and on issues of such importance. It's about ensuring that our brave men and women in uniform are only asked to put their lives in danger for a mission that is consistent with the will of the Canadian people. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I think that this motion will allow parliamentarians and Canadians the opportunity to better understand the mission in Afghanistan and to reassess how our resources are being allocated. There is no greater obligation for parliamentarians and government than to ensure that those members of the armed service that are put in harm's way are committed to such service with objectives that are attainable. These must also be circumstances that are productive within the context of a mission that is clear and understood. Greater accountability and oversight will at the very least provide for this opportunity. Accountability, oversight, and transparency are the hallmarks of the democratic system of government. If we are not prepared to apply these principles to the mission in Afghanistan, then we are doing a great disservice to our country and to this Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Member for Scarborough.
Scarborough-Guildwood, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the honourable member's speech. Yeah. I wanted to ask the honourable member with respect to the ironies of actually bringing this motion here today, and why is it that really Canadians need this special committee? It's not the Liberal Party that needs a special committee. It's not the Bloc, the NDP, or the Conservative Party that needs a special committee. It is Canada or Canadians that need this special committee. And why is it that, if you will, we have to bring the government kicking and screaming into this motion, and now they're apparently agreeing to support it, as is the NDP, and I'm not sure of the Bloc's position. What does he see Canadians as getting out of this, in terms of the benefit of information out of this committee?
The honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Scarborough-Guildwood for his remarks, and I quite agree with him that, in fact, that it's kind of sad that we, in fact, have a government that speaks about accountability, that speaks about transparency, but in fact does the exact opposite. And we, as the opposition, have to force this government constantly to be accountable, to be transparent to Canadians. On an issue as important to Canadians and to this Parliament as the Afghan mission, we have to make sure that we send clear signals to our men and women in uniform that we have a clear direction where we're going. And the accountability is of great importance. And this particular composition that we'd like to see in formation as soon as possible is extremely important to make sure that they, in fact, are living up to the commitment that they made to both this Parliament and to Canadians. And we would hope that they would do that, and I would hope they would have unanimous support of this House, because I think it's a motion that is worthy of support from all members, no matter where they stand on this issue. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions and commentaires. Resuming debate, please. Oh, question and comment? The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood. Another question.
This was such a fine speech, Mr. Speaker, and this is such a fine speaker that we should, in fact, he should have an opportunity to speak more fully. And I thought I'd like his comments on the fifth Manley recommendation, which says the government should provide the public with franker and more frequent reporting on events in Afghanistan, offering more assessments of Canada's role and giving greater emphasis to the diplomatic and reconstruction efforts as well as those of the military. Does he anticipate that this special committee is in fact a fulfillment of the fifth recommendation of Mr. Manley's report?
The honourable member for Davenport. brief
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Speaker, and again, thanks, my honourable colleague. I think one of the recommendations that I thought that was very striking in the Manley report, no matter how people felt about the Manley report, was the whole issue of the fact that the government is certainly not communicating and it's not being transparent enough with Canadians about this mission. And I think that part of the reason why we're trying to get the government force them to in fact be more transparent and accountable is because we know that the success of this mission depends on transparency, depends on accountability, and we need to make sure that Canadians are in fact aware of what's happening down there, and that in fact that we have in this Parliament put all the everything in place to make sure that we are in fact accountable. But it's because Parliament has done it. It's because the opposition has in fact put forward a motion. It's not because the government has done anything about accountability and transparency when it comes to this mission.
Questions and comments?